Among the many sentient peoples who call the galaxy home, few are as misunderstood as the Gungans of Naboo. Dwelling primarily in the great underwater cities beneath the swamps and seas, the Gungans developed a vibrant civilization. To outsiders, their speech and customs may seem curious, yet those who study the history of Naboo know that the Gungans possess a proud warrior tradition, sophisticated technology adapted to aquatic life, and a deep reverence for communal harmony. And their timely intervention during the invasion of Naboo by the Trade Federation would act as a domino in a chain of events that would shape the very future of the galaxy.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Tashi Station to pick up some power converters.
Biology.
The Gungans were a sentient amphibious people native to the lush world of Naboo, preferring to dwell near or later in the waters of Naboo rather than the wide open plains. Averaging 1.9 meters in height and roughly 75 kilograms in mass, with a lifespan of around 65 years, Gungans were distinguished by powerful leg muscles for swimming, long fin-like ears they sometimes tied back, long extendable tongues, and among many lineages, eyes set upon retractable stalks. Their lanky arms ended in 4-fingered hands suited to craft and combat, while broad feet with 3 stubby toes anchored them against shifting riverbeds. Skin coloration varied widely: brown, green, pink, and even white, paired with eye hues of orange, purple, or yellow. Females were typically slightly smaller with sleeker facial features. Though united as one people, the Gungans comprised 2 principal subspecies, the numerous Otoh and the rarer Ankura. The Otoh were the more aquatic branch of the species, typically associated with the underwater cities of Naboo, while their relatives, the Ankura, were more adapted to life on land and in swamps. The Otoh, among whom was Jar Jar Binks, commonly displayed orange or purple skin and prominent eye stalks, and protruding bill-like mouth, while the Ankura were marked by hooded eyes, broad heads, and predominantly green skin, maintaining a disproportionately strong presence upon the High Council, despite their smaller numbers. Once distant from one another, these lineages were ultimately unified through shared leadership and the founding of Otoh Gunga, binding their differences into a single civilization. Life for a Gungan began in the quiet translucence of the tadpole stage, hatched from eggs embedded in riverbed mud cradles. As they matured, their bodies lengthened and straightened into tall forms supported by remarkably flexible cartilaginous skeletons. Powerful calves and well-padded knees drove swift frog kick strokes through open water and lent them prodigious leaping ability on land, while their fin-like hailu, or what humans might call ears, served not only as stabilizers in motion, but as vivid instruments of expression, flaring in aggression, drooping in fear, or lifting in greeting. Partially retractable eye stalks, shielded by nictating membranes, granted clarity beneath the water's surface, and a specialized mucus-secreting organ prevented water from entering the nasal passages and mouth. Their nostrils sealed instinctively upon submersion, and strong compound lungs allowed them to endure both the pressures of the deep and extended periods without air. Expressive faces dominated by long bills and flaring nostrils along the muscular tongues and blunt teeth suited to consuming lesser amphibians gave them a visage at once curious and formidable. A toughened cranial layer permitted burrowing, while the 4 stomachs enabled the digestion of shells and dense vegetation. Though eye hues varied, green was considered uncommon among their kind. With age, some males, such as General Tarpals, developed prominent whiskers, a mark of maturity. Females, smaller and sleeker of face, often bound their ears back. Cultural aesthetics held lighter ear flaps in high regard, while darker tones were deemed more boyish. So perfectly were they shaped for water that harsh, arid climates proved taxing. Their skin prone to drying in desert heat, as experienced by Jar Jar Binks during his sojourn on Tatooine. Scholars have long noted possible evolutionary ties between Gungans and the native Glurgs, the latter serving as a worker caste within Gungan society. Indeed, the species was catalogued in the Republic Xenosociological Database.
Society.
Excuse me, but the most safest place would be Gunga City. It's where I grew up. 'Tis a hidden city.
Long ago on Naboo, explorers uncovered the Gung slabs, a set of ancient monoliths engraved with Olus Corellisi on one side and Old Gungan on the other. Olus Corellisi, translated in Basic as Old Corellian, had once been used by the early humans of Corellia. The dual inscriptions proved invaluable. Alongside the research of philologist Burrow Flatts of the Baobab Archives, the slabs enabled scholars across the galaxy to better understand the language and culture of the Gungan peoples. The slabs were central to deciphering Old Gungan, a language spoken during the time of the Old Republic. Over time, however, the spoken language of the Gungans evolved. Most Gungans used a variation of Basic, commonly called Gungan Basic or Gunganese, which occasionally incorporated elements of Old Gungan. Few individuals could still speak the pure Gungan language. This later form of speech functioned largely as a pidgin dialect, generally understandable to those fluent in Basic. Gunganese blended slightly altered Basic vocabulary with the occasional Old Gungan term. For instance, "Six du Puis isa very good" translates to "6 land speeders are very good." Despite their distinctive phraseology, the Gungans maintained a tradition of scholarship that remained largely unknown to the wider galaxy. Among their cultural achievements was the epic poem Das Depu Epu Si, translated as Deep Dark Water, an ode to da beauty all round that inspired great pride among them. Gungan alpha males were also known to produce a series of oral clicks when aggravated or angered. As a people, the Gungans were generally generous and peaceful until the invasion of the Trade Federation. They welcomed visitors warmly, though they often remained wary until those visitors had earned their respect. Threats to their peaceful culture were treated with severity. Gungan society operated under strict laws, and punishments for even minor crimes could be harsh. Vandals, for example, might face exile, caning, or stoning. Exile carried lasting consequences. A Gungan cast out of society found it extremely difficult to return, and those who did so legally often endured months or years of discrimination until their past offenses faded from memory. Returning illegally to a settlement, especially if outsiders were involved, could result in the death penalty. Only significant deeds could fully restore an exile's standing. One notable example was Jar Jar Binks, whose role in uniting the Gungans and Naboo against the Trade Federation led boss Rugor Nas to revoke his exile and promote him to Bombad General. The Gungans were also known to produce Force-sensitive individuals. Among them were Kin Ya Dosun and Kosa Yin Hadu, who served within the Jedi Order, while the child Ruru Page was considered a candidate for Jedi training. An unidentified Gungan also became a Sith Lord. For knowledge on subjects ranging from their own civilization to the fauna of the moon, Oma De'un, the Gungans frequently consulted an semi-sentient mollusk known as the Kretch, which functioned as a living repository of information. Each year, the Gungans also held the Festival of Warriors, during which the militia Gungs gathered to celebrate their martial traditions. Plans were made to construct an arena in Lake Umberbool for the festivities. For generations prior to the invasion of Naboo in 32 BBY, they remained a largely isolationist society, content to let the surface world pass above them. Long before circumstance would compel them into open alliance, the Gungans guarded their hidden realm with a formidable force known as the Gungan Grand Army. The Gungan military consisted mostly of male volunteers, rank upon rank of disciplined foot soldiers, each proudly calling themselves a Gung. Whether a militia Gung or full-time warriors, they stood ready with cestas, electropoles, and atlats, designed to hurl volatile plasmic energy spheres known in their own tongue as boomers. Behind the lines waited heavy catapults, capable of casting even larger charges across astonishing distances, their glowing trajectories briefly illuminating the mists that hung over the swamps of Naboo. To off-world observers, these weapons seemed strange, almost primitive in form, yet they embodied the Gungans' distinctive synthesis of biology, craftsmanship, and energy manipulation that defined much of their technology. Such martial strength answered to a centralized authority, a boss and the Rep Council, who governed from the high tower boardroom in the underwater city of Otoh Gunga. Yet for all their discipline and preparedness, the Gungans' greatest tension lay not beneath the waves, but upon the surface. Their relationship with Naboo's human colonists was marked by mutual unease. Many among the Naboo dismissed the Gungans as rustic or unsophisticated, while the Gungans themselves chose wary distance, withdrawing into safety of their lakes rather than risk further misunderstanding. History.
The Gungans were widely believed to be indigenous to Naboo, though this remains uncertain among biologists. Many researchers instead believe that wherever their original homeworld lay, the species first evolved as land dwellers before adapting to amphibious life. Evidence of Gungan habitation on Naboo stretches back ages. Their early history includes records of survival battles with the woolly Veermoks, large aggressive mammals, during an ancient ice age. Yet, the greatest pressure on their society came from the Bursas, dangerous predators that frequently attacked Gungan settlements. To defend themselves, the Gungans organized a grand army, eventually driving the Bursas to extinction. Gungan technology developed along unusual lines. Rather than constructing tools and structures in the conventional sense, they grew them from organic materials. As a result, everything from buildings to weapons possessed a living quality and was often unique. Ancient starfarers recorded stories of great Gungan migrations across Naboo's plains before the species transitioned to its predominantly aquatic lifestyle. One commonly accepted explanation attributes this shift in the arrival of an alien civilization of reptilian humanoids, remembered as the Elders. According to these accounts, the Elders colonized Naboo and fought wars with the Gungans, eventually forcing them to retreat beneath the planet's waters. Access to abundant underwater vegetation and plentiful gumfish, a favorite food source, likely reinforced the change in lifestyle. Over time, the two main branches of the species, the Ankura and the Otola, formed a symbiotic relationship and united culturally. For millennia afterward, they dominated Naboo, though they largely remained in its swamps, rivers, and lakes. The planet's mountains and grasslands were considered by them to be a harsh, desert-like environment. Around 3000 BBY, before the Battle of Yavin, Gungans were divided into rival tribes that fought one another in a conflict known as the War of the Gungan Tribes. The fighting ended when a leader called Boss Gallo united them. Following this unification, Gungans from various settlements migrated to form a large central city called Otoh Gunga, which they regarded as the primary capital of Naboo. Roughly 500 years before the Battle of Naboo, a group of impoverished Gungan fishermen were recruited by agents working for Hugo Barton, a human off-worlder who sought settlers for a new city on the distant world of Lamerad. Promised rich fishing grounds and an unexplored frontier, many Gungans accepted the offer. Upon arrival, however, they were forced into slave labor instead, creating a deep unease of outsiders. Relations between the Gungans and the human inhabitants of Naboo were historically strained. Gungans often viewed the humans, known collectively as the Naboo, as pompous and cowardly, while the Naboo considered the Gungans primitive barbarians. This hostility endured for centuries, finally ending with Padme Amidala, the Queen of Naboo, forging an alliance between the two peoples to resist the invading Trade Federation during the Battle of Naboo. Over centuries of coexistence with humans, the Gungans had also developed a hybrid dialect derived from their own language and Galactic Basic, commonly called Gungan Basic. Following the battle, the Gungans gained representation in the Galactic Republic Senate through Jar Jar Binks, who served as their representative. Population pressures on Naboo also led to an expansion beyond the planet. Gungan settlers established colonies on Naboo's moon, Omadun, while a more extremist group settled on the other moon, Rory. During the Clone Wars in 22 BBY, the Confederacy of Independent Systems deployed a biological weapon known as swamp gas on Omadun. The attack devastated much of the colony's population. A Jedi-led task force later defeated the CIS forces during the Battle of Omadun, preventing further danger to Naboo, but many of the Gungan colonists had perished regardless. After the Clone Wars ended and the Galactic Empire rose to power, Imperial forces established a presence on Naboo. Fearing possible enslavement, many Gungans withdrew into semi-seclusion within their traditional habitats. Despite this caution, Gungan resistance fighters clashed with Imperial troops on several occasions. When the Empire suffered defeat at the Battle of Endor in 4 ABY, the Gungans and the human population of Naboo united once again. Together, they expelled the remaining Imperial forces and reclaimed their world as a free home for both species. In the years that followed, Gungans began traveling across Naboo, the wider galaxy, in much greater numbers. Gungan immigrants on Lamerad achieved particular recognition. Working alongside the aquatic Quarren species, they helped engineer the gondola skimmer sub, a popular amphibious vehicle designed to travel both above and below water. Other notable Gungans on the planet included Bamford, who operated a tap cafe in Barton's Landing, Boom Boom, who served as the second-in-command to the local security chief, and the mighty Mustoro, an Ankura wrestler. Beyond Lamerad, Gungans also cooperated with other species in business ventures, including the joint operation of the Daruma Resort in the moon world of Daruma.
Are you brainless?
I speak?
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here.
No, Mr. Stay. Mr. called Jar Jar Binks. Mr. your humble servant.
That won't be necessary.
Oh, but it is. 'Tis demanded by the gods, it is.
Religion. Gungan religion centered on a polytheistic pantheon of deities, known collectively as guds, divine beings believed to influence both the natural world and the fate of Gungan society. Among these guds were Mechamach, Wamka-Pol, Balmtop, Dabis, Kabul, Nobudu, Balam, Goba, often called Gob-Goba, and the chief deity Oma-Oma, who presided over the pantheon. Within this belief system, each good governed particular forces or aspects of life. Some were considered benevolent. Dabis, the goddess of rain, and Gob-Goba, the god of fresh water, were seen as important nature deities responsible for sustaining life on Naboo. Others were viewed as dangerous or destructive. Mechamach, the god of destruction, embodied ruin and catastrophe, while Balmtop, the god of disease and putrefaction, represented decay and illness. A number of guds occupied a more ambiguous role beyond good and evil. Nododo, the trickster god, was famous for playing mischievous tricks on both mortals and fellow deities, sometimes disguising himself as animals when visiting the world of the Gungans. In rare cases, mortals themselves could become divine figures. According to the Gungan legend, Balaam had once been the first Gungan warrior. After his death, the chief goddess Oma Oma granted him immortality, transforming him into the divine lord of war, so he could teach the other guds the art of battle. Gungan religious belief were also shaped by ancient relics left behind by mysterious species known as the Elders. The massive statues and ruins they left behind were interpreted by the Gungans as sacred icons of their guds. Sacred locations such as the Gungan Sacred Place in Leonorm Swamp and the Gungan Caves were originally elder constructions, distinguished by enormous stone heads that later generations associated with their deities. Religious ideas influenced everyday social customs as well. The Gungans believed their guds themselves established a tradition of life debts, a binding obligation to repay someone who had saved one's life. The famous Gungan Jar Jar Binks once reflected on the nature of these gods during a discussion with Padme Amidala, Queen of Naboo's human population. According to Gungan mythology, the guds lived in a magnificent underwater city called Osiris, a divine realm believed to lie beneath Naboo's waters. There, Oma Oma ruled as chief of the pantheon, sometimes described as holding the title of boss among the guds, while still consulting with other major deities before making decisions. She was believed to have created all life on Naboo and oversee the activities of lesser gods, including Adabus and Gob Goba. Despite Oma Oma's authority, one deity lay outside her command, Mechamach. Though he still resided in Osiris, the other guds avoided him because of his association with destruction and decay. The city was said to be protected by Balaam, who served as its divine guardian after his transformation into the god of battle. Legend also claimed that Balaam created a hidden paradise in Naboo's swamps called Otoh Gunga. In this afterlife realm, the bravest Gungan warriors, known as militia gungs, would arrive after death and spend eternity engaging in combat exercises and strategy games. Should Osiris ever come under attack, the warrior Otoh Gunga would rise to defend it. Gungan lore further described Osiris as guarded by enormous Sando aqua monsters, massive aquatic predators native to Naboo, as well as giant spectral Gungan warriors riding the loyal Kadu, a reptilian mount commonly used by Gungan soldiers. By the time of the Battle of Yavin, a radical religious faction called the Ultra Gungans had emerged on Naboo. This fundamentalist sect formed its own armed group, the Ultra Gungan Militia, which fought alongside the Gungan army against the Trade Federation droid army during the invasion of Naboo. After the conflict, they retained many captured droids, particularly B-1 series battle droids, as spoils of war. During the Galactic Civil War, the Ultra Gungans established camps near the Gungan Sacred Place and maintained a hidden lair on an island in the Lasay Swamp. They were openly hostile toward both the Naboo government and mainstream Gungan society. Sometime after the Battle of Yavin, the Ultra Gungans stole an artifact belonging to boss Rugor Nass. The sect broke the artifact into 6 pieces and hid them across Naboo. In one ABY, Boss Nass hired an independent spacer to recover the fragments. The spacer successfully retrieved the pieces and returned them to the Gungan leader. In exchange, Nass aided the spacer in recovering an experimental Old Republic droid component, a stochastic decision chip, hidden inside a super battle droid under Ultra Gungan control. Technology.
While most spacefarers were quick to dismiss the Gungans as primitives, such judgments betrayed a profound ignorance. Beneath the lakes of Naboo, they cultivated an advanced, if wholly singular, technological tradition. Rather than forging cold durasteel angles, Gungan artisans grew the very foundations of their buildings, vehicles, and devices from living matter, shaping and guiding organic forms before embellishing them with sweeping artistic flourishes. The result was a fluid, non-rectilinear aesthetic that seemed less manufactured than coaxed into being, technology that appeared as though it had blossomed from the currents themselves. Central to this achievement was a mysterious blue-white plasmic substance harvested from the oceanic depths. This viscous energy, quote, goo, as some offworlders crudely termed it, served as the primary power source for Gungan civilization. Refined and contained within spherical matrices, it energized their cities and formed the heart of their weaponry, where controlled bursts of the luminous plasma could be hurled with surprising force. Nowhere was their ingenuity more evident than in their mastery of shield technology. The great underwater cities relied upon hydrostatic energy fields to hold vast bubbles of breathable atmosphere against the crushing weight of the sea. On land, Gungan infantry advanced behind portable shield frames, capable of deflecting blaster fire, their glowing barriers shimmering under enemy assault. In times of full war, massive shield generators could project an immense dome of protective energy over entire armies, halting not only laser bolts, but objects carrying tremendous kinetic force. Yet even with such command of exotic energies, the Gungans never abandoned their bond with living creatures. Beasts of burden remained integral to their society and warfare.
Gungans not dying without a fight. We say warriors. We say got a grand army. That's why you know liking us, Mr. Dinks.
Military. The first gathering of what would become the Gungan Grand Army arose not from war among peoples, but from the need to defend themselves from the fauna. In those early ages, Naboo's wetlands were stalked by the Bursa, massive carnivorous beasts with tusked snouts and thick hides tufted with coarse brown feathers. Though not sentient, Bursas were cunning and territorial, known to shape crude mud dwellings in the marshlands they claimed. For generations, they posed a grave threat to the scattered Gungan settlements. In response, the Gungans organized their first unified fighting force, driving the creatures back through the swamps and eventual extinction. Centuries later, around 3000 BBY, the Grand Army took on a more political purpose during the bitter War of the Gungan Tribes. Rival bosses and their followers clashed for dominance across the watery cities of Naboo, until one leader, Boss Gallo, succeeded in uniting the tribes. Under his command, the Grand Army defeated the warlord Boss Rogue, bringing an end to the intermycene struggle and establishing the precedent that the army would serve not merely as a defensive host, but as an instrument of Gungan unity. From that time onward, every Gungan city maintained a strict tradition of preparedness. Annual muster and drills were held so that the militia gungs, citizens called upon for part-time service, could assemble the Grand Army within 36 hours if the boss of Otoh Gunga issued the call. Yet as the centuries passed and no great war threatened Naboo, the army became more a symbol of vigilance than a force regularly deployed. Thus, the Trade Federation blockaded and invaded Naboo in 32 BBY. During the invasion of Naboo, the Grand Army had not marched in over a century. During the later turmoil of the Clone Wars, it would fight beyond Naboo itself. Around 21 BBY, the Jedi Grandmaster Yoda appealed directly to boss Leone, ruler of Otoh Gunga, requesting aid in a desperate conflict between the seas of Mon Cala. Persuading in part by the Gungan senator Jar Jar Binks, Leone committed to a contingent of the Grand Army to the campaign. Transported aboard a Venator-class Star Destroyer, Gungan warriors entered an alien ocean battlefield where they faced the Confederacy's mechanical legions. The fighting was brutal. Many fell, battling the separatist aquatic droids and the ruthless commander Riff Tamson, whose Trident-class assault ship created devastating whirlpools that captured entire formations of Gungan fighters. Survivors were imprisoned among the coral reefs until the young Mon Calamari prince Li Char rallied them in a daring counterstrike. With the aid of defecting Quarren and the leadership of Admiral Akbar, the Gungans helped turn the tide of the underwater war, ensuring Li Char's coronation as king. Yet even as they fought abroad, danger brewed at home. Rumors spread across the Naboo that the Gungans had secretly aligned themselves with the Confederacy of Independent Systems, threatening to shatter the fragile peace between Gungans and humans. Manipulated by the treacherous minister Rish Lu, Boss Leone prepared to march the Grand Army on humans of Naboo and Theed itself. The crisis drew the attention of Naboo's senator, Padme Amidala, and the Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who uncovered that Leone had been placed under subtle mind control through the ceremonial necklace. Once freed, the boss attempted to confront the conspirator, only to be wounded by Rish Lu, who failed to kill Leone. Believing Leone dead, the minister fled to the surface to rouse the Grand Army and begin the march on Theed. Desperate to prevent civil war, Skywalker devised an unlikely solution. Jar Jar Binks, bearing a striking resemblance to the wounded boss, would impersonate him long enough to halt the mobilization. For a brief moment, the ruse succeeded, but events spiraled further when separatist forces arrived, led by the fearsome General Grievous. Amid the confusion, the Gungans fought fiercely to disable the invading droid army. In the climactic struggle, the valiant General Tarpals, veteran of the Battle of Naboo, sacrificed his life, impaling the cyborg general with a spear and buying the warriors precious seconds to bring him down with a storm of boomas. For a brief, triumphant moment, the Grand Army of the Gungans held one of the Confederacy's greatest commanders captive. The wider conflict soon drew in Count Dooku, leader of the Separatists, whose machinations led to a tense prisoner exchange before both sides withdrew from the planet. In the aftermath, Queen Nayutni praised Binks for once again helping to restore unity between Naboo's people, a unity the Grand Army had, in its own turbulent way, helped to preserve. By ancient law, only the reigning boss of Otoh Gunga could summon the Grand Army, yet its warriors could often be found throughout Naboo in quieter times. Militia gungs training in the city plazas, guards patrolling the coral towers of Otoh Gunga, and cavalry riding their swift Kadu mounts through mist-filled marshes. Even after the fall of the Republic, the army continued. Its backbone consisted of militia guns, ordinary citizens who supplied their own equipment and answered the call when their world required them. Elite guards defended the cities with double-bladed electropoles, while Kadu cavalry carried officers and scouts across swamp and field. Generals commanded their formations with horns, whistles, and sweeping gestures. their orders echoing across shimmering deflector shields mounted upon towering fambas, massive reptilian beasts of burden. These shields, a marvel of Gungan ingenuity, could turn aside blaster fire while allowing slower objects to pass, perfectly suited for warriors who hurled crackling boomers using spears, latels, and cestas, but preventing retaliatory blasters and shells from passing through. Their wagons, drawn by mighty Afalampaset, carried great glowing energy charges for catapults, while an entire menagerie of living creatures, Cereborus, Leras, Swifts, and tireless Glurg workers, served alongside them.
Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
We're currently exploring the beautiful underwater depths of Otoh Gunga. On a tour with a guide who I'm having a lot of trouble understanding, but that's okay.
Yeah, but before we get into that, let's do some housekeeping here. Of course, you guys all know. Make sure to follow us on all the social medias: Instagram, Facebook, X. We're also on Discord. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to hit 1,000 followers over there. So make sure you go over there and hit sub. Also, if you want to support the show, if you want some extra bonus content that you don't normally get on the regular feed, go right over to patreon.com/starlores. And for $3 USDs a month, in this day and age, that is nothing. You can get access to our full library of bonus episodes. For $5 USD a month, you not only get bonus episodes, but you also get ad-free episodes of all the newer episodes. Yeah, other than that, also make sure to rate and review the show. That helps get us to a wider audience. And yeah, I think that's about it. Christian.
Let's talk about Gungans.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite species. People have been clamoring for us to do this episode for a long time. So I'm glad we could finally get around to it.
Yeah. For you seafood lovers.
Overall, the Gungans get a bad rap. A lot of that comes from obviously their association with Jar Jar Binks. But let me just say that one character should not poison us against the whole species.
I don't know that even like Boss Nass and some of the other tertiary Gungan characters got that great of a reception either, to be fair.
You're not wrong.
It wasn't just
Jar Jar.
Just Jar Jar.
Yeah.
There's kind of an aversion to all of it, but
yeah, you're not wrong. That being said, we're here. We're talking about it.
I will say I do like just conceptually, it's cool to sort of introduce sort of the human colonizers on the surface and then this like indigenous people like under the water. I think that's actually like kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
In terms, just conceptually, whether it was executed good or not is another question. But
yeah, as a artistic or narrative choice, it is interesting to explore, and it's cool in the way that like they can explore the same world from two angles.
Yeah, totally.
And it appears differently to the two of them. And the Gungans actively avoid the places that the humans typically inhabit, not because the humans are there necessarily, but because the land isn't suitable to the Gungans' physiology, right? Like they prefer being in water and near bodies of water and in swamps rather than like open grassy plains or in mountains because there's no water there. And the Gungan biology is amphibious, right? So they need to be around water. So yeah, it's cool you have that like duality of Naboo.
Yeah. I think what also kind of would have been really cool is if if episode 1 were ever like remade or something, like
Please.
doing like a full on just James Cameron
Avatar.
Yeah, Avatar.
Gungatar.
Revamp of like making the Gungans cool.
You
Like,
don't even have to do a redo episode 1. You just got to do like a side story, like a Star Wars side story.
Yeah, totally. Like, could someone rehabilitate like the Gungans on the big screen?
Gungan image.
If anyone could do it, it could be
Dances with Gungans.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't totally hate that idea, and I hate that I don't hate it. Yeah.
I mean, I will say I did like visually the Otoh Gunga.
Yeah.
Like the city and stuff and the going underwater. And back then it was like really stunning looking. Just in terms of the CGI and stuff.
Even as a concept is cool. Like living
Yeah.
in bubble cities, like that's a cool, unique thing you haven't seen in Star Wars yet.
Yeah, totally.
Or in a lot of sci-fi, really. I mean, obviously it has existed in other franchises, but overall it's like a cool, unique thing. Rather than, you have another generic looking sci-fi city, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting take. And it's cool because it is built around the physiology of the species. Again, that amphibious, aquatic. Let's build a city underwater and see what that looks like as a cool location.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. There's a common thread through Star Wars, I find, and it probably comes from George Lucas's politics, is my feeling, where you have these like indigenous species to planets that use a lot of like technology that is, and it is almost kind of a noble savage kind of trope, but having these species that have technology that's like built off of nature, like the Wookiees have a very similar aesthetic, obviously adapted to trees. Ewoks, again, similar aesthetic, although they're not really technologically advanced. The Wookiees definitely are, but their technology mirrors the environment that they're from,
right?
The same way the Gungans do with like aquatics.
Mm-hmm.
And their technology is quite advanced. It just looks more.
And they are distinct from
biological.
other aquatic species, like the Mon Calamari or the Quarren, who are much more kind of elite and royal and aristocratic. The Gungans kind of present as a little more primitive, but they are technological still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, they also surprisingly have a lot of lore too.
Yeah.
Like, we know about their religion quite
crazy.
in depth. We know about like
It's
their
actually
ancient
cool.
history. Yeah. I quite appreciate, and they are a warrior culture, which is not something that's necessarily evident in the small glimpses we get. But again, like we spend most of our time with Jar Jar, who is the exceptional Gungan.
Yes.
But when we do see all the other Gungans, like they do assemble this grand army. That's like obviously something that they do and they're able to do naturally, as opposed to how the humans of Naboo, who don't, they have a small, meager security force and that's about it. But the Gungans obviously have weapons of war and like the ability to, like, it takes a lot of resources to suddenly spawn up an army as necessary, right?
Yeah.
And the Gungans are able to pull it together because culturally that's what they do. So it's cool. I quite appreciate warrior cultures personally, and there's many in Star Wars to choose from. Again, kind of mimicking off the Wookiees as well. One thing in what we talked about is the Gung slabs that gave us a lot of these ancient texts that we're able to translate ancient Gungan writing from, very much similar to the Rosetta Stone in real life, that had Greek, 2 forms of Greek on it, and hieroglyphics, which was able to have us retroactively translate hieroglyphs, which is an interesting little nod to real history.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like the inclusion of sort of artifacts and stuff. It feels a little more real, a little more like, that's
there's
what
depth.
would happen. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like they obviously spoke a language before humanity or before BASIC came into their parlance, and you have a whole like narrative built around how the languages changed, and now they have this like combined pigeon speak almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
The name Gungan allegedly is something that the name came from George Lucas from his son when he was young, would used to call tractors and trucks Gungans, and allegedly that's where it comes from. However, there's also an Australian type of frog that's called a Gungan too.
Oh,
And obviously
okay.
there are Gungan parallels between the species and the frog, but
Like
I
an
don't know which came
amphibious
first.
species, yeah.
I don't know if
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You
so if
think
any
they
of our
named
Australian-
the frog after the Star
it seems
Wars
to be
Gungan?
like not in a scientific name. I think it's like a localized name for it.
like a colloquial name.
Yeah. So if any Australian listeners want to reach out to us and let us know if you know whether or not which Gungans came first, the frog or the species, the alien species. And it could go either way, right? If it was the frog first, and obviously with their amphibious design being after the frog, it makes sense to pick a frog to name your species after. But if it's the reverse, it'd be very interesting if like Star Wars has leaked into real life and some guys like, that looks like Jar Jar. Start calling all the frogs Gungans. So yeah, I'm just curious on that front if any of our listeners can get back to us on that. They are in their appearance. They are very frog based, even down to especially the what's the Otoh or the Ankura have a very like frog like appearance, and they're quite distinct looking. That's why Boss Nass looks so different from Jar Jar. They're technically like two subspecies.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And the Ankura give this kind of like toad like appearance, where the Otoh Gungans are like more. They have a kind of a combination of things, which I'll get into in a second, but they're more like frog like. They're like more slender, where the Ankura are like wider. It's a weird dynamic you see a lot in lizard type species in fantasy universes. Like one that comes to mind immediately is a Warhammer. Their lizard species have like this land species that are very toad like, and then they have like a warrior subspecies. They're not even subspecies, but like subfaction within the lizard man species grouping, and they're more reptilian looking. But they're more slender. They're more this kind of like toad frog dynamic comes across in a lot of different universes that use that kind of like archetype, which is kind of an interesting thing. But anyways, back to the Otoh, who are like the Jar Jar types. They have some obvious resemblances to hadrosaurs, the dinosaurs, obviously often called duck-billed dinosaurs. I find anyways, like with their wide mouths and things. But obviously they also, again, they have that amphibious thing. I mean, they're born as tadpoles. Like let's be honest there. The frog. people.
I seem to remember in one of the films, like, isn't Jar Jar able to jump pretty high too? So there's like that element.
Right, exactly. They're like the frogs.
Yeah. Very frog-like.
Yeah, and the long tongues and everything. They're obviously based off of frogs.
Yeah.
But also they have that like aesthetic that I find is a little bit dinosaurish, as opposed to another dinosaur species is Coleman Trevor's species, who's a Jedi Master who gets shot in episode 2 by Jango Fett. Everyone calls him the Dinosaur Jedi.
Okay.
Who also looks like a hadrosaur, but more specifically a Parasaurolophus. He's got kind of like that head piece on the back of him. Completely unrelated to the Gungans, but I just
What's kind of interesting about the Gungans, I guess, what makes them distinct from the Ricotta or the Mon Calamari Aqualish, who are all seem to be either based off fish or squid, like the Quarren. Like the Gungan are more of amphibious, like they can live on land and underwater, and that's kind of how they're modeled, I guess.
And then one more feature I wanted to really talk on was the fish aspect. Older Otoh Gungans, Otoh Gungans will grow almost a facial hair, these like whiskers that look almost like catfish. So Captain Tarpals, for example, has that.
Yeah, interesting.
So obviously they're a combination. A lot of Star Wars creatures are a combination of various inspirations. Often animal inspirations. And another quick note, just while I'm talking about Captain Tarpals. Not a lot of people know this character. He's like that more serious guy who gets partnered with Jar Jar in episode 1. He does have a name. I don't know if they ever say it on screen, but we used to have an action figure of him when I was growing up, so I knew him from the start. But he does come back in the Clone Wars series where he has kind of a heroic death fighting General Grievous, which is pretty crazy as a feat. And again, it speaks to the warrior culture of the Gungans. Like General Grievous is, at least in other side fiction other than the main movies, is quite menacing. He kills a lot of Jedi. So for like a non-Jedi Gungan warrior to solo him and even like spear him is quite a significant feat. So credit to Captain Tarpals, forever in our hearts, fighting in I forget what their paradise is called, but they're the equivalent of their Valhalla, which which their warriors go to fight, which is obviously another inspiration there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Gungans, Christian, who's your favorite fishy fish species? Is it the cotton, the Gungan, the calamars, the corn, the aqualish?
I've actually always had a soft spot for the corn.
Yeah.
I kind of like them. They have kind of like a Cthulhu.
Yeah, very Cthulhu. Yeah.
And they're always the bad guys too. So.
I feel like I want to do sort of a maybe fish minor species episode or something, like aqua minor species episode. Like we did Quarren and Mon Calamari need a whole episode.
Yeah, there's
themselves.
enough content on that as it is.
But there's like, I was even just looking on Wikipedia. There's a lot. There's a lot of like minor
species.
like water species, But yeah, it's kind of fun. It is interesting, just water species in general, and like our own human sort of history with the water and vast bodies of water. So much mythology comes out of the water.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like religious beliefs and stuff that come out of that is, like, has to do with the water and like the unknown depths, so there's something kind of interesting. I don't know.
Humans have had, and obviously we need it, like we're dependent obviously on water to survive,
right? Yeah.
And it's also a unique aspect of Earth is that liquid water, so there's this like deep mythology and this deep biology that ties us with water, which is a very interesting dynamic, even though we're not necessarily an aquatic species.
Yeah.
There is an evolutionary theory. I don't know how popular it is in mainstream circles or not in academia, but it's a theory that we're actually water apes.
Okay.
And that's why we're kind of like more hairless and like built more, like we can swim quite well compared to other primates.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, we're like the water version of primates.
Oh, interesting.
Which would explain a lot of different things. I don't know how airtight that theory is or watertight that theory is.
I sort of just thought we, through like selection bias, we sort of shed the hair.
That was like the original theory.
Okay.
This water ape theory is, I think, a lot more recent.
Okay.
And when I say a lot more recent, I think like maybe
that would make
90s, 2000s.
Yeah, that would make. I know like swimmers like shave all their body hair, right? When
it makes you that much more sleeker.
Yeah. So. It kind of, I guess it kind of makes sense, but I'd have to.
I don't know all the details around it. I thought it was an interesting theory, if nothing else.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But yeah, I don't know how, like I said, how watertight that theory might be.
Yeah. Anyways, before we head out, let's dip into the mailbag. We got a lot of messages from people, but we're just gonna do one for today before we sign off. So this one is from Jonathan, and he's a supporter of the show on patreon.com/StarLords. So make sure you become a supporter for $3 USD a month. So Jonathan says, here's a question for the show. I feel that the books, comics, and expanded material in Disney Wars is probably where some of the better content can be found, like the Darth Vader comics, New Thrawn trilogy. Now, just as an aside, admittedly, I haven't read those. I have heard good things about those in terms of the Disney stuff.
I've picked up some of the Darth Vader comics, and there are some. I would say some of the better stuff that they put out.
Yeah, but even that was like a few years ago now. Like the Star Wars, the Darth Vader stuff came out. Like
it's still coming out, I think. Like it's an ongoing.
I don't know what the new stuff, the new Darth Vader stuff is, but like the stuff that was getting a lot of buzz was like over 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, when it first started dropping.
Anyways, sorry. So he continues. Jonathan continues. Creators here can be a little more free from the constraints. Are there any authors from the old guard, or perhaps other authors that might do a great job in the Star Wars realm? I'm a major fan of Dan Abnett's comic book work, and have recently been reading his Warhammer novels. I read at least one of his Warhammer novels too. I think he could revolutionize Star Wars in a way that if he were given carte blanche in the High Republic era or something. Just a thought. Yeah. That's interesting. Bringing out like more well-known authors instead of some of the authors. I don't know where they get some of these authors.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that. But
like they did get Timothy Zahn
to come back
and rewrite his original story. But they did get him, and obviously, like he's kind of an OG of the expanded universe, right? But I don't know. What do you think about them doing that, like getting well-known authors?
Yeah. Before I get into other authors, Dan Abnett, who was mentioned in this, it's interesting that Jonathan knows him more for his comic books and his Warhammer stuff, because he's definitely, I know him from the Warhammer stuff first.
Yeah.
But he is quite a prolific comic book author.
Okay.
But most people would probably recognize him from his Warhammer.
Yeah, I read his Warhammer books too. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I do like. He's had some hits and some misses, I will say.
Sure. Yeah.
But
he's prolific. Like he's written a lot. So he's gonna
across a lot of different franchises and universes and things. And I think he's savvy enough that he would delve into the world that he's in. I don't think he would bring in dumb ideas or force an idea in that doesn't work with the rest of the narrative. I think he's quite savvy about working within the realm that he's supposed to be working with, right? Like you're not gonna make a grim, dark Star Wars story, although we have a whole episode on that, which you could do. Not saying you shouldn't, but you know what I mean? Like he's not going to like drop in Space Marines all of a sudden or throw in superheroes into a Star Wars story, right? Like I think he would respect the universe at the very least.
Yeah.
Authors who I would like to see, I'm not sure. And also I'm not sure that they could save the franchise.
I think if they were allowed to go somewhere like nowhere close to any of the established stories, I'm talking Disney Wars, any of those established stories, if they were just allowed to go somewhere else, completely different timeline, different part of space,
given their own kind of
maybe they could come up with something cool, you know.
Again, even the High Republic as a concept I never hated. I've said that numerous times, but the people they have working on it obviously are not up to quality. I'd like to see George R. R. Martin take a crack at it, only to piss off Game of Thrones fans so that he never finishes his works.
I feel like he is just
he definitely would do a terrible
It would
job
not work for
No,
Star Wars.
It would not.
It's just not Star.
Although Luke and Leia kissing seems to be up his alley, so maybe I'm not crazy.
No, actually, I think I did mention if there was a Naboo story.
Right, exactly. Game of Thrones,
Naboo.
Very political intrigue, right?
If it was like maybe a quick little trilogy or something. Yeah, like
all the Gungan sex you could imagine. No, I don't have any authors in my mind that I think, they could do a one-off story that's good. Like Disney has had its occasional hits or its occasional gems, even with the movies, like Rogue One, right? Like, it won't be enough to rehabilitate the franchise, and especially not through the novel world, because Star Wars is predominantly a movie franchise.
Yeah,
and I hate to say, Dan Abnett also wrote the screenplay for the first Space Marine movie, which was not well received. So I don't know that he would be up for the challenge. If Star Wars is ever to be rehabilitated, it will have to be through film and maybe TV. As a distant second. And I don't see, like, even if you wrote like a best-selling novel for Star Wars, it wouldn't move the needle much in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree. Like, Star Wars really has just been it's from conception, it's been a visual medium. And as much as I like the literature, I mean, I would love to see, like, I don't know, someone like Anderson or Drew Karpyshyn, come back and maybe write some new stories. But
my worry is how much control the company would have over them. And if in Jonathan's scenario, he said carte blanche, like it's up to the author to kind of determine, in which case they could do a good job with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like especially now, well, until recently, but who knows what the future will hold, that the studio is very involved in meddling with creatives. So they realistically probably wouldn't be given carte blanche, and they would have this studio or whoever is in charge kind of forcing their ideas on the creative, which never ends well anyways.
I mean, I wish they just kind of got like Timothy Zahn, Drew Karpysh, and Kevin J. Anderson like all in a room, and we're just
And
like
be the writing team.
You guys are gonna be like the creative directors of all the literature, and like you're gonna say yay or nay to everything, right? Like, but of course that never happened. They needed to hire a bunch of blue-haired weirdos. So.
Straight from their local university protest.
Yeah, exactly.
All my favorite authors are dead, so none of them would be taking up the pen. And the ones that I currently read are, the books I read are quite different than I don't think would fit Star Wars. They're often very violent, very graphic books, historical fiction that I don't know would necessarily play well in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Fair.
So I just don't have any recommendations. Bring back the old guys. I'll take them over anyone Disney has on writing staff right now.
I mean, the last fiction, but I think the last fiction. No, I read a Western. That was the last fiction book. I was trying to delve into some Westerns.
And what good Western author might be what Star Wars needs.
You never know. Cormac McCarthy, come on. Just write a violent Star Wars book. No, but like Orson Scott Card, like I finished the Ender Quartet of the Ender series. He could probably pull off a Star Wars book. I could totally see him pulling off an interesting Star Wars book, playing with some interesting ideas. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Comment, send us some emails, give us your ideas,
some suggestions.
Who would be some great like new Star Wars authors to write some Star Wars books or series or story arcs or whatever. So, anything else there, Christian?
No, I think that'll do us for this episode.
Cool. Well, make sure to go check us out on social media. All of our links are in the description of this episode. And if you want to support the show, patreon.com/starlores, and you can become a supporting member. And thanks, everyone. We will see you next time.